Hello and welcome to the Big G Video Podcast. Now, I do something called a weekly update, and I've done 126 of these weekly updates, and well, that's what I'm going to talk about today because I'm going to change it and I'm going to incorporate it with this podcast. So there's going to be some changes, some different things in the podcast. So what is the weekly update? Well, the weekly update is a short, first of all, and I don't really know where I stand on shorts, but it is a short, and it just reviews and sort of summarizes what I've done that week in terms of the videos I've made. So I give a real sort of high level summary of what I've done that week with the videos. As it's so short, it's maybe between 10 and 20 seconds. I do it as a YouTube short, and I've decided I'm going to stop doing it. It was ultimately a experiment and it went quite well. So I've just looked at my stats for it, and I've earned a whopping £1.72 for all of these weekly update videos, and I've got 6.3 thousand views, so 6,300 total views. And for some of them, I'm getting 70 views, over 100 views, 140. I'm getting quite big views, but all they do is really say, hello, this week I made these videos. So the way I do them is I use a couple of pieces of software. I use something called Prowd Feed, which is a web service, and that allows you to make a video from pictures. In some of the more recent ones, I've got these snazzy backgrounds where the thumbnails are displaying and moving in the background. I use Prowd Feed for that. Prowd Feed does other things, but that's the main thing I use it for. The other thing that I use is AI avatar software to do my speech person. So I don't record it myself, I just type it out and I use AI avatars. The one I use the most is Pipio, and with that you can set transparent backgrounds and you can upload files, so that's really quite good. So that allows me to have a person at the front talking and have my moving background of thumbnails at the back with a title and all manner of stuff like that. And Pipio is really good. And I also use Revoicer to clone, which has got a clone of my voice, so it sounds sort of like me but in an Americanized way. So I use those three pieces of software to put it together. I often have to edit the script because I write out the text and I might say AI, as in capital A, capital I. We all know what that means, but what I have to do is I have to make it phonetic, so I have to write A as in EH and I as in EYE, and I have to change the text so it's more phonetic so that it works better with text to speech and sounds more natural, because if you put in like an acronym in text to speech, it tends to try and say it as a word rather than pronounce it as an acronym. So that's something I do. And when I first started using them, I was using a Pulpona piece of software. I think it was maybe Avatar Builder or Human Voice or something like that. I'll probably put up a screenshot on the screen so you can see that. That was template based, so that allowed you to put pictures and stuff in the background, and it was quite good, but the workflow I have with Pipio is better. And this will maybe take me between 15 and 20 minutes start to finish to do that. It's quite quick. I normally do them on a Sunday. I'll be sat down watching a bit of telly and I'll do them on the Sunday because that's when I deem my video week to be over. And like I say, I've done 126. Recently, I had a couple of weeks where I didn't release a video, and then I came back to it. I released quite a lot of videos this week and I thought, I have to do one of those, and I thought, no, I'm going to change it. I ultimately did it as an experiment. The experiment has, I don't know if it's significantly upped my views. My hope was I would put a short out, people would see it and say, I'd like to watch that video and know more, and then they would either go and find the video or they'd use the link that I put in the short to go to the video I was linking to. Shorts are never good for my content. My content doesn't really work with shorts because my content is very long form. It's not something you can easily break down into snippets and bite-sized chunks. It just doesn't work like that. So I've never had a great deal of success with shorts. The only time I've been fairly successful was when I did something with a MagSafe Apple charger, and I made that specifically for shorts, and that's done quite well. That's earned me a whopping £2.20, but that's my highest grossing short. I often see shorts, I've always seen shorts as a way to get people to your long form content. So I'm not a shorts only creator. I have experimented with using video repurposing software that takes your long form in the form of a YouTube link and it repurposes it into clips. They're a bit fiddly. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but ultimately my stuff just doesn't work with the shorts format. So I've tended to sort of avoid that, and I've stopped using that. So that's services like Video Tap and Spike and things like that. So I've always liked podcasting, and originally when I was thinking of doing the update videos, I did think I'll build it into the podcast. That then did tie me down to doing a podcast every week. And then I decided, you know what, with all the AI technology I've got access to, I'm going to try doing these weekly update videos. And I think it's run its course, the weekly update videos. It does work. It is 20 minutes, but in 20 minutes I could do a podcast. That's the thing. It takes me 20 minutes to put it together. A podcast might take me 20 to 30 minutes to put together. So actually, I'd rather do a podcast. I think my listeners would rather hear a more in-depth review. And what I'm going to do going forward is I'm going to have sections in my podcast where I talk about the videos I've made that week, as well as the topic I'm talking about. So with that in mind, I'm going to go and talk about the videos I've made this week. So I made another podcast episode about why I'm not going to buy the Insta360 X5. So a brief summary: I had the One X2, I had the X3, I've got the X4, I never got the One X, but the X5, it's very good, but it's also very expensive. And the only things that I can see are better are you've got this Insta framing where you stay in frame wherever you move, and you get a video that comes out that is MP4 and you don't need to go and do any editing, or you don't need to go and open it up in an application only to export it, even if you're not reframing it. And that's not good for me because I'm a faceless channel. So I don't want to be in my videos. I don't want to be the main person. So I wouldn't use that. And I'm quite happy with using me mode on the X4. That me mode's absolutely fine for my uses. And the other thing that I think is very good is the pure video mode. So I've got an Ace Pro, and pure video mode is very good. I use the Ace Pro quite a lot, and I use pure video mode loads when I'm using the Ace Pro. And to have it in 360 would be really useful, but I just don't think it can justify another £500 spent on another action camera. And you can replace your lens, but I've never needed to replace my lens anyway. And that was one of the things I liked about the X4. You had guards that you could change. You don't have to stick them on, and going from the X3 to the X4 was big enough change, so I went for that. Going from the X4 to the X5 isn't. I might wait till the X6 comes out and either get the X6 or get the X5 at a cheaper rate. So I talk about that in the podcast episode. And recently, in fact, not that recently, a while ago in March, I went to the photography show and I got a Shiftcam case and a Shiftcam lens for my iPhone. And the reason I'd not done that before was not Shiftcam, but mobile phone or smartphone lenses are bulky, they're a pain, unless you've got a case where you can just screw it straight in. And because I've always had older iPhones, I never really got a case. I couldn't find anywhere, any system that did the case for me. But when I went, I popped in to this store and I said, oh, we got an iPhone 13 Pro case, and they happen to have one. So I then got a lens as well, and I thought, oh, this is quite good. So I have bought into the system, and I took a couple of weeks off, and then I did a video. So I did a video about an anamorphic lens, and that was quite good. I think I'd already done a video about that, but I didn't realize that. And I'm just testing out the lens and going around places. I'm looking at my notes and thinking, oh, I've given it a terrible title. I need to change that title. So I'm going to do that straight after this podcast. So I did that. And then I did a podcast episode again. I mean, I'm just banging out the podcast episodes this week or this fortnight about the Shiftcam lens series. But really, I'm talking more generally because there are other systems you can buy into, but you are locked into a system if you go down this route. So I did another podcast episode about that and the benefits of it. And while there are benefits, there's not only benefits. There are some disadvantages as well to sort of adding lenses to your smartphone and using your smartphone more. it swings around abouts. So I did a podcast episode about that. And then I did a review of the Shiftcam 75mm macro lens. Now that's quite useful, and I changed the style of the video because while it was a review of the lens, it was also talking about how you can just improve your B-roll by using a really simple macro lens. So I've got a macro lens for a bigger camera, an APS-C Sony camera, and I think I've got one for my Canon camera. But you can really improve your B-roll if you use macro. So that was the slant I took with that video, of improve your B-roll by just having a macro lens. Of course, you could use a close-up lens. You can get macro adapters for things like DJI Pocket 3, but they're just not that good, the close-up lens attachments and the attachments you can get for the Pocket 3. And sort of if they're the worst, then your dedicated macro lens for an interchangeable camera is the best, and the smartphone lens sits somewhere in between. You get a really shallow depth of field, which is very useful, but also it means you've got a bit of a razor thin plane of what's in focus, so that is a bit of a disadvantage as well. So with all tools, you've got to use them to their best. So you've got to find what works with a tool and really change the way you use it to get the best out of it. So play to the strengths of the tool. So if you want to blur the background, then this is really good. If you want lots of things in focus, then it's not so good. And with that being said, in that video, I compare it to that macro lens. I compare it to the inbuilt macro capabilities within the iPhone 13 Pro, because with that, the lens you're using isn't as good. It's the ultra wide lens. It's not as good as the standard wide lens, but you do get lots more depth of field, and you can get closer and things as well. And you don't need to pay out for a lens. So I've done that comparison as well. So those are the videos I made last week. Obviously, I'm making this podcast episode now. I'd love to hear your feedback. I don't often get many comments about the podcasts I do, but if you'd like to comment and tell me about the new format, if you'd like to comment and tell me what your thoughts on the weekly update shorts videos I used to make, let me know, because I will consider them. That it's not fixed that I've given those up. I may come back to them, who knows. I will probably be doing posts on YouTube about sort of updating of the videos I've done that week. But yeah, let me know. I always love to hear the comments and know what people are thinking. Thank you. Goodbye.